She quit her job to paint pictures. My grandchildren deserve better than a mother who abandoned a real career to play artist in a garage. My mother-in-law Constance declared from the witness stand, her voice dripping with the righteous contempt she'd perfected over 15 years of disapproving of everything I did. I'm seeking grandparents' rights because these children need stability, not a mother who treats life like a bohemian fantasy. I sat at the defendant's table, hands folded, watching the woman who'd made my marriage a battlefield present her case for why I was unfit to raise my own children. What Constance didn't know, what her expensive attorney had apparently failed to research, was that the judge currently presiding over this case had seen my work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, had attended the gala where I donated $12 million to Children's Hospital, and was about to demonstrate exactly how catastrophic it can be to sue someone without understanding who they actually are. The lawsuit had arrived 3 months earlier, delivered by a process server who'd found me in my studio. I'd been working on a commission for a private collector in Dubai, a triptych exploring memory and loss that would eventually sell for $2.3 million. The papers had seemed absurd at first. Constance Whitmore versus Isabel Hartwell, petition for grandparent visitation rights on grounds of parental unfitness. The allegations were extensive. According to Constance, I had abandoned gainful employment to pursue an unstable artistic hobby. I had isolated my children from their extended family. I had created an unsuitable home environment filled with paint fumes and dangerous materials. I was emotionally volatile and incapable of providing consistent structure. None of it was true. All of it was Constance. My husband David had died 2 years earlier, a sudden heart attack at 44 that had shattered our world. In the aftermath, his mother had transformed from merely unpleasant to actively hostile. She'd blamed me for his death, stress from supporting my artistic delusions, demanded control over funeral arrangements, which I'd refused, and ultimately decided that my children belonged with her rather than me. The grandparents' rights lawsuit was her nuclear option. The history between Constance and me stretched back to my wedding day. I'd met David in graduate school. He was pursuing an MBA. I was finishing my MFA in painting. We'd fallen in love over late-night conversations about art and business, about dreams and practicalities, about building a life that honored both ambition and creativity. Constance had hated me from the moment we were introduced. An artist? She'd said, her tone suggesting I'd announced a career in professional gambling. How interesting. And what do you plan to do for actual income? I'd been teaching part-time at a community college then, selling paintings when I could, slowly building a reputation in the contemporary art world. David had believed in me completely, supporting my work while building his own career in finance. Mom doesn't understand creative careers, he'd explained. She'll come around once she sees how successful you become. She never came around. Every holiday, every family gathering, every phone call contained subtle digs about my hobby, my impracticality, my failure to be the kind of wife Constance believed her son deserved. When I quit teaching to paint full-time, after my work started selling consistently for 5 and 6 figures, she declared it proof of my instability. You had a salary, she'd said. Benefits. Security. Now you're gambling your family's future on whether people feel like buying pictures. People were buying pictures. Museums were buying pictures. Collectors were flying in from Europe and Asia to see my work. But to Constance, none of that mattered because it didn't fit her definition of success. David's death had changed everything. Without him as a buffer, Constance's hostility had become direct and relentless. She'd shown up at our house unannounced, criticizing my parenting, questioning my decisions, telling my children, Olivia, 12, and James, 9, that they could always live with her if their mother became too unstable. I'd tried to maintain a relationship for the children's sake. I'd invited her to holidays, sent photos and updates, facilitated video calls. But every interaction ended in conflict, and eventually I'd had to set boundaries. You can see the children with my supervision, I'd told her. But I won't allow you to undermine me in my own home. She'd interpreted boundaries as warfare. The lawsuit claimed I'd alienated the children from their grandmother and denied reasonable visitation, ignoring the dozens of visits I'd facilitated before her behavior became intolerable. Her attorney had gathered declarations from Constance's friends attesting to her deep concern for her grandchildren's welfare. My attorney, Patricia, had been unconcerned. Grandparents' rights cases are notoriously difficult to win, she'd explained. The petitioner has to prove that denying visitation would harm the children, not just that they want more access. Nothing in Constance's filing comes close to that standard. Then why are we even in court? Because she hired an expensive attorney who probably told her what she wanted to hear. And because family courts have to take these petitions seriously, even when they're frivolous. Patricia had paused. Though I have to admit, I'm surprised her team didn't do more research on you. What do you mean? I mean they're about to argue that you're an unsuccessful artist with no income. That might be awkward when the judge realizes who you actually are. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Family court lacked the grandeur of criminal proceedings. Just a modest room with fluorescent lighting and worn carpet. The gallery held perhaps 20 people. Court staff, a few observers, and Constance's entourage of supportive friends who'd come to witness her triumph. Judge Margaret Holloway presided from an elevated bench. She was a serious woman in her 60s, known for thorough analysis and little patience for frivolous claims. Constance's attorney, a slick man named Bradley Turner, opened with a portrait of maternal neglect. Your Honor, my client seeks grandparent visitation because her grandchildren are being raised in an unsuitable environment by a mother who has abandoned stable employment, isolated the children from extended family, and prioritized her personal interests over her children's welfare. He detailed my failures. Quitting my teaching job, working in a garage studio, actually a professionally converted barn with climate control and ventilation systems, refusing to let Constance have unsupervised access to the children. Mrs. Whitmore simply wants to ensure her grandchildren have stability, Turner concluded. The kind of stability their mother cannot provide. Constance took the stand with theatrical reluctance, dabbing at carefully manufactured tears. I just want what's best for those children, she said. My son would be heartbroken to see how they're being raised. Their mother spends all day painting pictures while they raise themselves. There's no structure, no discipline, no future planning. How would you describe the defendant's financial situation? Turner asked. Precarious at best. She quit a real job to pursue this artistic fantasy. David was supporting them before he died. Now she's burning through savings while pretending to be some kind of creative genius. And the home environment? There are paints and solvents everywhere. The children have mentioned smelling chemicals. It's simply not safe. I watched her performance with detached fascination. She'd constructed an entire narrative, a story about a struggling artist neglecting her children, that bore no relationship to reality. But she believed it completely, because believing it justified everything she wanted to do. Patricia's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Whitmore, how often did you visit your grandchildren in the past year? As often as I was allowed. Their mother restricted my access. The defendant's records show 17 visits in the past 12 months. Is that accurate? I suppose. But they were supervised. She wouldn't let me see them alone. You're aware that supervised visitation is common when there are concerns about a grandparent's behavior? I've done nothing wrong. You told your granddaughter that she could come live with you when her mother fell apart. Do you recall that? Constance's expression flickered. I was offering support. You told your grandson that his mother was wasting his father's money on paint and nonsense. Do you recall that? I was expressing concern. You told both children that artists never amount to anything, and that their mother should get a real job. Do you recall that? I was trying to prepare them for reality. Patricia let the silence hang. Mrs. Whitmore, do you know what your daughter-in-law's paintings sell for? A few $100s, I imagine. That's what art sells for at local fairs. Have you ever researched her career? I don't need to research failed careers. Have you ever visited her studio? Why would I want to see a garage full of paint? Patricia turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce the defendant's professional portfolio and financial records into evidence. The documents landed like bombs. Gallery sales records showing paintings sold for $50,000, $100,000, $300,000, $2.3 million. Museum acquisition letters from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Smithsonian, the Art Institute of Chicago. Reviews in major publications calling me one of the most important contemporary painters working today. Financial statements showing annual income exceeding $4 million. Trust funds established for both children. A charitable foundation that had donated over $20 million to causes including, relevant to the proceedings, $12 million to Children's Hospital for a new pediatric wing. Mrs. Whitmore, Patricia said calmly, your daughter-in-law is one of the most successful living artists in America. Her work hangs in museums visited by millions. She has provided her children with educational trusts, professional health care, and a home environment supervised by studio assistants who manage any materials that might pose safety concerns. Constance was staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. That can't be right. She paints pictures in a garage. She paints pictures that collectors pay millions of dollars to own. She donates to hospitals that save children's lives. And you've just testified under oath that she's an unsuccessful failure who neglects her children. Turner was frantically flipping through his own files, clearly seeing this information for the first time. Your Honor, we weren't aware. You weren't aware because you didn't look. Patricia turned back to Constance. One more question. You testified that your son would be heartbroken by how his children are being raised. Are you aware that David established the trust that funded the children's hospital donation, specifically to honor his wife's success? That's not possible. The trust is named the David Whitmore Memorial Foundation for the Arts. Your son believed in his wife's career enough to ensure her philanthropy would continue after his death. He left detailed instructions about supporting her work. Constance's composure finally cracked. She brainwashed him too. She made him think her paintings mattered when he should have been building a real legacy. Judge Holloway spoke for the first time since the examination began. Mrs. Whitmore, I think that's quite enough. The judge's ruling was delivered immediately, unusual for family court, but clearly justified by the circumstances. Mrs. Whitmore, I've reviewed the petition and the evidence presented today. I'm dismissing this case with prejudice. Your Honor, Turner started. I'm not finished. Judge Holloway removed her glasses and looked directly at Constance. Ms. Hartwell, the Isabel Hartwell whose paintings hang in the Met, who donated $12 million to Children's Hospital, who has provided her children with resources most families can only dream of, is demonstrably fit to raise her own children. But her lifestyle includes charitable contributions that have saved countless young lives. Her hobby has made her one of the most celebrated artists of her generation. The garage you described is a professional studio that has produced work valued in the millions. The judge leaned forward. You came into my courtroom claiming this woman was unfit because she quit a teaching job to pursue art. You failed to discover, or chose to ignore, that her art career has been extraordinarily successful. You testified that she's financially irresponsible when she's actually a millionaire philanthropist. You claimed she neglects her children when every piece of evidence suggests she's provided them an exceptional upbringing. I was just trying to protect my grandchildren. You were trying to punish your daughter-in-law for not being the woman you wanted your son to marry. You've used this court as a weapon in a personal vendetta, wasting judicial resources and causing unnecessary stress to a widow and her children. Judge Holloway's voice hardened. I'm not only dismissing this petition, I'm ordering you to pay the defendant's legal fees. And I'm issuing a formal warning. Any further frivolous filings against Ms. Hartwell will result in sanctions. The courtroom emptied faster than I'd ever seen. Constance's supporters fled first, unwilling to be associated with such a spectacular defeat. Turner gathered his files and left without making eye contact. Constance herself sat frozen in the witness chair, staring at nothing. I approached her after everyone else had gone. This didn't have to happen, I said quietly. I tried for years to have a relationship with you. For David's sake. For the children's sake. You ruined everything. Her voice was barely a whisper. My son was supposed to have a different life. A proper wife. A traditional family. Instead he married you and now he's dead and you have everything. I have 2 children who lost their father. I have a career I built with his support and encouragement. I have a foundation that honors his memory. What do you have, Constance? What has all your bitterness given you? She didn't answer. The children still need a grandmother. But not this grandmother. Not someone who uses courts to attack their mother, who tells them their family isn't good enough, who made their father choose between his wife and his mother for 15 years. I turned to leave. If you ever genuinely want to be part of their lives, without conditions, without judgment, without trying to control everything, you know where to find us. The case made news, not because of the lawsuit itself, but because of how thoroughly it had backfired. Art World Star defeats mother-in-law's unfit claim, read one headline. Judge School's grandmother who didn't Google daughter-in-law, read another. The story became a cautionary tale about assumptions, about researching before litigating, about the danger of believing your own narrative so completely that you can't see reality. Constance retreated from public view. Her friends, the ones who'd supported her crusade, quietly distanced themselves as the true picture emerged. The woman who'd presented herself as a concerned grandmother was revealed as something else. A snob who'd spent 15 years resenting her daughter-in-law's success. A year after the trial, I received a letter. It was from Constance, handwritten, which surprised me. She'd never been one for personal communication. Isabel, I don't expect you to read this, but I need to write it. I spent so many years convinced I knew what was best, for David, for my grandchildren, for everyone. I saw your art as frivolous because I couldn't understand it. I saw your success as somehow illegitimate because it didn't match my definition of achievement. The judge was right. I was punishing you for not being who I wanted you to be. I was so focused on my disappointment that I missed who you actually were. Someone my son loved deeply. Someone who's given the world beauty and given children in hospitals a chance at life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. But I wanted you to know that I finally see what David saw in you. And I'm sorry it took public humiliation to open my eyes. If there's ever a chance, any chance, to know my grandchildren again, I'll take whatever terms you offer. Not because I deserve it, but because they deserve a grandmother who can love without conditions. Constance. I read the letter twice. Then I called my children into the studio and asked them what they wanted. Olivia and James chose to give her a chance. Not immediately. There were months of therapy first, family counseling to establish boundaries and expectations. Constance had to demonstrate change, not just claim it. She had to accept that I was their mother, that my career was valid, that her judgments had been wrong. She's done that slowly and imperfectly. The relationship isn't warm, but it's functional. The children see their grandmother monthly, with my blessing. Constance has learned to ask questions instead of making pronouncements, to admire instead of criticize, to be present instead of controlling. She came to my latest gallery opening, stood in front of a painting for 20 minutes, studying it carefully. It's beautiful, she said finally. I don't understand it, but it's beautiful. That's more than she ever managed before. My mother-in-law sued me because I quit my job to paint pictures. The judge recognized my name. The case was dismissed. But the real victory wasn't in court. It was in proving that success doesn't have to look the way other people expect. That art isn't frivolous just because some people don't understand it. That a mother who paints is no less fit than a mother who practices law or medicine or business. Constance called me unfit. The world called me extraordinary. In the end, the world's opinion mattered more. And my children? They call me Mom. That's the only title I've ever needed.